welcome. Thanks for joining tonight's Fireside Chat. We'll just give it a couple of minutes. I know Zoom can take a little while for a few people to log on, so we'll get started. There's a good number of people joining just now. Hello, Becky. Hello, Tia.
Hello.
How are
I
you
feel
both
like we should be
doing?
sat by the fire if it's
Yeah,
a
I
fireside
know.
chat.
Goodness. Well, I feel like we need it at the moment as well because, it's July, but you wouldn't think it was summer, would you?
No, you wouldn't. No. Or I
Um,
think, I don't know, the tears having. Oh, she's back.
She's back.
Sorry, right, there we go. Sorry, guys. It
No
muted me
worries,
again.
Tia.
I don't want me to speak.
Perfect. So I can see a few more people are joining. So we'll just give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Yeah, just to say a huge thank you to Becky and Tia for joining, and to you all for joining our Fireside Chat this evening. So I'm Kat. I work for Fertility, and we are the UK's first virtual fertility clinic, specialising in all things fertility, IVF, egg freezing, but particularly egg donation. So we find and match egg donors with families, individuals, same-sex couples, or anyone in need of donor eggs. So I'm really pleased to be here tonight with Becky, who we've worked with for many, many years now, and then also Tia. Thanks to you both for joining. So they're going to be sharing their story and their experience of this journey with you all this evening, and talk a bit about their lived experiences, and they'll be sharing some sort of tips, support with you all. So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Becky and Tia. Yeah, just to say, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those into the chat and we can pick them up throughout the course of the chat this evening. Thanks all. Thanks, Becky, over to you.
Thank you, Kat, and welcome everyone who is joining us tonight. I'm delighted to have lovely Tia with me, and I'll let Tia introduce herself in a second. But just to introduce myself, I'm Becky Kearns. I'm also known as Defining Mum through my Instagram account and my sharing of my own story of how I became a mum through egg donation. I'm also the founder of Paths to Parenthood, which is a support platform for those on the journey through egg donation. So Paths to Parenthood is there to help prepare you on this journey and also to support you through pregnancy and parenting after donor conception. And what I'm really looking forward to tonight is simply just having a chat as two mums through egg donation, because I remember going through my own experience and knowing that I felt so alone. And I really just needed to connect with somebody who had been there, who understood the feelings, the complexities, and everything else that goes on this journey, as we call it. And that's what helped me through it. It was through meeting somebody on a NetMums forum that allowed me to see the possibilities and allowed me to recognize that my feelings were real, and allowed me to take that step forward. So that's what I really hope that myself and Tia can help you with tonight. And I know we've had so many questions in. I've got 3 A4 pages in front of me printed out of questions, and we'll try and cover as much as we can tonight. And like Kat said, do pop any questions that come to mind as we're speaking in the chat box. Just to give a very brief overview of my story, and I feel like I've told it so many times, and apologies if you already know this, but for anyone that doesn't know me, I went through a diagnosis of premature ovarian insufficiency when I was in my late 20s. Was told I needed to go through IVF. We went through 5 rounds of IVF and a miscarriage, and that didn't work for us. And that's when we then made the decision to go down the route of egg donation. But it wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't an easy decision. It felt like a leap of faith at the time. But thankfully, we were very fortunate in that it worked for us. We went to the Czech Republic. And I'll talk a little bit more around those decisions around anonymity and everything a bit later. But we were able to have our 3 girls, Mila, who is now 8, and my twins, Esker and Lena, who are 6. And since having them, I've been sharing my story. I've been learning so much about this path. I've been learning from donor conceived people. And also, one of the greatest things that I think has really come out of this is the connection with other families and other parents, and being able to see other families like ours. And Tia is one of the people that I have met through Instagram. It's amazing, this little corner of the internet where you can meet people who have such similar journeys, but also individual journeys as well. And Tia, I'd like to just bring you in now just to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about your own story, if that's okay.
Of course. So hi everyone. So I'm Tia, and kind of a similar story to Becky actually. So I was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency in my late 20s as well, and I did attempt treatment with my own eggs. So we did have 3 rounds of IVF, but unfortunately we never got any embryos to transfer. And then my ovaries stopped responding completely. So then we were faced with the decision what our next steps were. And like Becky obviously said herself, it wasn't an easy decision to make. Our fertility doctor, at the time, I should say, we did have these free treatments across 2 clinics in England. And we were given the decision whether we wanted to live a child-free life, adopt, or egg donor conception. So it wasn't an easy decision, but me and my husband come to the decision, which I'm sure we'll probably expand on later on, how we both come to the decision and why, of going down the route of egg donor conception. I did have treatment in Greece, and now I have twins, boy-girl twins, who are 2.5 years old. So a bit further down the line now, obviously Becky's a bit further, but yeah, that's my story in a nutshell. And like Becky, I share my story on Instagram and my family life, through parenting through donor conception, and that's life with the Brown family. So everything's on there, and that's how I managed to connect with people as well, and obviously meet people like Becky was through Instagram. It can be a very lonely journey, and trying to find people that connect with you and can understand your feelings, because they are very unique feelings and quite misunderstood by people who are not on this path. So it's a great way to connect with others. And so that's just a little bit about my story.
You did that really well in a nutshell. I always struggle to keep it down. And I can't believe actually when you said that the twins were 2.5, because I still remember following your journey as you went out for treatment and finding out you were pregnant and all of that. So it feels like we've all been on the journey with you. And I think you can only get so much across in an Instagram post, can't you? It's very static, and what I really love to talk to you about now, and I think a lot of people who are listening tonight just looking at the questions are in that stage of having to make the decision, is egg donation right for me? And how did you get to that decision, Tia? And I'll talk a little bit about us in a second. But
I think mine was, I was probably a bit more ahead. So I knew after our first round, with no embryos, that they did say that we would probably need to go down that route. And following yourself, and it was I think you were the only person that I did follow, who was going through, who had, well, obviously you had your little ones, well, they're not little anymore, but yeah, your little ones, through egg donor conception. So that was one thing that helped me, was following yourself and seeing obviously how I was ahead of Lee. So I had already started to look and knew that that was potentially the route we were going to have to go down. I wouldn't say I was fully mentally there, because I was there, but I wasn't, because obviously it wasn't the reality yet. But I'd started looking into things after our first round, and then after our third round. So I was already partly there. I'd done a bit of research, but I knew that that would have been the route for me, just because I didn't want Lee to grieve how I was grieving and what I had been through. I didn't want to take that from him, with the route of going down, say, adoption. We knew a trial-free life wasn't for us. That was just not something that at that moment in time that we wanted to explore. So it was either adoption or egg donor conception, but I didn't want, basically, I didn't want Lee to feel the pain that, and I wanted to be able to carry them. Obviously, if I could at the time, obviously I didn't know. I wanted to be part of it, and the way I could be part of it, of bringing them to the world, was carrying them. So I think that's how I come to the decision of that was for us. And it did take Lee longer than me, which I think a lot of, and I struggled with. In my head it was, what is your problem?
I was exactly the same with Matt. It's like
because I think
it's
you
hard,
feel
isn't
like
it?
it's me who's losing everything, you're not. What's your problem? Like, get on with it, sort of thing. But to them, they are losing a lot as well. They're losing of what their dream was with us, and what they pictured their family to be like as well. So it did take Lee a lot longer, but it was quite a whirlwind. I am someone who, when I know what the end goal is, I just want to get there. And obviously, like, you don't know if it's going to work until you obviously, and when you've had, like yourself, numerous failed rounds of treatment, all you can see is it failing again. It's hard to, no matter how hopeful you stay, it's hard to picture actually having a baby in your arms.
It is. I'm completely just like you with that. Like, I didn't feel like, if I wasn't doing anything, I just couldn't settle. I felt like I needed to be doing something. And very, very similar with making that decision. I was there before Matt was, and I still remember a conversation with him, and I was thinking, hold on a minute, it's my genetics that I'm saying it's okay to do this. But I now know that he was grieving that loss as well. And I think for me it was finding someone else, and then he was able to kind of get snippets from their story that then helped him come to terms with it. But it is so hard because you are taking, what I said earlier, a leap of faith, aren't you, into the unknown, really. And what helped me, I think, was that I just knew I wanted to be a mum, and like you, I wanted to try and carry if I could, and wanted to get, it seemed like the logical next step. And I don't know whether we'd have carried on for adoption or anything like that if it hadn't have worked. But for us it was right, okay, let's take this next step and see where we get to. And I don't think I was, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, but I don't think I was 100% absolutely sure when we went down that route. And I think often I have people say, no, I've still got wobbles, I still feel worried. And I think that's completely normal because, like we say, you are going into the unknown, and it's not something you've always imagined you would have to do, choose a donor to potentially sort of take over the role of your genetics. It's a really, it blows your mind actually when you think about what you have to get your head around and what you have to almost deconstruct in terms of how you imagine things would be. I mean, were you similar with that side of things?
Most definitely, I think, like, going back to saying, like, you can't imagine a baby, so decisions we were making was based on us, just because I just, like, not that we didn't think about future child, but we just, because it's not there, we just couldn't imagine actually being here. So a lot of decisions we made were based on us. And I remember being pregnant, like, what, and I actually said, like, what the hell have I done? Like, like, what have I done? Like, are they going to hate me? And I did struggle with my pregnancy. I was terrified the whole way through of everything. I was terrified of something going wrong because, like yourself, that's all I ever knew was things going wrong. So I was waiting for it to happen. But also I was terrified I wasn't going to bond, and those, and they, like I said, it's the unknown. Like, and a lot of people are saying, well, everyone has those worries when they're pregnant. Of course, like, people have worries like if they're going to bond and things like that, but it's a different type of
it's an added layer, isn't it?
And it's just the complete unknown of, like, oh gosh, what have I done? Like, I didn't ever question if I was gonna love them. I remember my mum saying to me, like, because I was worried, like, I was like, I feel nothing, but I think I had shut myself down because I thought if I was going to get close to them and something was going to happen, that it would affect me 100 times more than if I didn't. And I remember my mum saying to me, like, Tia, you do love them, you do care. That's why you're getting yourself in such a state that something's, like, I remember I was having, like you with twins, like, it's hard to know which ones actually, like, have they both kicked today, or was one just kicked today?
I was exactly the same.
And I had anterior placenta, really placenta in the front, so it's blocking some of their kicks. So I was always at the hospital getting checked out, and I remember my mum saying to me, like, if you didn't care and you weren't bonding with them, you didn't love it, you wouldn't be here all the time panicking. So, but I think in your head, like, you just, I don't know, it's just the unknown. You don't know how to feel. Like, I always say to people, let yourself feel how you feel. Like, you're not a bad person to feel how you, like those feelings, like, and I think, like, I'm sure you get all the time, people in your group worried that, are they a bad person for you feeling the way you're feeling? Exactly. I think it's just natural, like we've all had bizarre feelings and thoughts, and it is the unknown. And I remember I put this huge birth plan in place of what I wanted to make sure that I bonded with them, and due to obviously unforeseen circumstances during the birth, none of that happened. I didn't meet them for hours and hours after they were born, and my thing was I wanted them on my chest before they were even on these, like someone's got to hold them. I want to do this, like all these stuff. Nothing happened, but that didn't affect anything, like my bond or anything with them. But I thought that all that was going to affect me if I didn't have all that, and I obviously not a choice, but I didn't have it, and it didn't actually affect it. So I think I think when they're here it's different.
It is, and that's the thing. I think when you hopefully finally become pregnant, if for those watching, it suddenly feels real, doesn't it? Because you're suddenly like, oh gosh, this is no longer a concept. There is a child, and I'm going to meet a complete stranger, which anybody who's pregnant is meeting a little stranger. But there's almost this added level with donor conception. I just want to go back because I know we had a question around the genetic loss element, and that someone has asked how to emotionally overcome the genetic loss, and I've really tried through my account to put some words to what genetic loss feels like in this kind of scenario where you are losing that potential kind of mini me you might have always imagined, or that legacy that you want to leave, that kind of feeling that nobody can doubt your bond because you are genetically related. You know what I mean? When you've not got that, you always feel like there might be that doubt over your legitimacy as a parent, or people might not see you as the real mom, and all of these fears are so real. And this is why we, within Paths to Parenthood, we talk about these things, because I know I didn't address any of this before I went down this route. And very similar to you, when okay, we've made the decision, let's quickly go and do it. And I think we both went abroad, and we can talk about that as well. But I think I almost give advice to people that goes against what I did, was to just try and take some time to, like exactly what you said, feel how you're feeling, and know that that's okay to feel that way. Because I know at the time I was like, well, why am I feeling so sad about this when I've got all this opportunity to become a mom, and I should be grateful, and I've got this amazing chance that I hadn't had before. But I still felt really conflicted in it, and I felt sad that I wasn't going to have that imagined child I'd always had. But I suppose for me it tipped when I started to think about the possibilities of what I could gain, not just what I had lost, but what I could gain. And what I wanted out of this was to be a mom. I wanted to have that child, to raise that child, to have those conversations, literally just come back from swimming and run through the door to come up here, and just those little day-to-day things that is mothering. And that's nothing to do with genetics at all. And it is trying to sometimes switch your mindset from what you're losing to what you're gaining, but also acknowledging the loss at the same time. And I don't know, how did you cope with that, and how, like, is it something that's continued? Because I don't think it fully ever goes away, does it?
No, I totally agree. I don't think it ever goes away, and it's not a reflection on your love for your children at all, like you couldn't love them anymore. I remember a while ago, like I thought, like, I don't feel that they're not genetically connected to me. So like, I don't know any different. I've got nothing to compare it to like you, but I don't feel like it. And I remember one day I got really upset. So I was like, am I lying to myself? Am I in disbelief? Am I not? And like, even though I talk about it, I'm very open about it, like with everyone, but I was like, question myself, like, am I like in denial that because I'm not like feeling that? But it's because I don't feel any different. Like they're just mine, and that's it. Like, yes, there isn't that genetic link. Like, for like aware of that. But it's not something that and there is times when like different things have happened. Like, I remember ages ago, I remember just going up to, they were like babies. I remember going, all they wanted was Lee, I think. And I think I remember you speaking about this with about Matt. And I remember going upstairs and crying my eyes out, like, they don't want me. but all kids go through stages, because at the moment they only want me. And then Lee's offended, like, why do they not want me? But you automatically go to, oh, it's because I'm not genetically like related to him, that's why they don't want, they know he like he's genetic related. And I remember with like, they're a lot closer to mine mum and dad, and that's just because maybe because I'm a girl and I'm always with my mum and dad sort of thing, like I'm really close to my mum and dad. But they're very, very close to my mum and dad. And I remember ages ago we were I used to go to this twin play group, and Lee's mum come along as well as my mum. My mum was already there, and then I think it was Malaya, my little girl, ran up to Lee's mum and went and sat with her. And I was saying, what are you doing? Why are you not sat with like Nanny? Like and I was like, Mum, were you upset? She's like, no, it was nice to see. But in my head, it's, oh my god, my mum's gonna think that she's gone to them, because but obviously my mum and dad don't think anything like that. But so sometimes it triggers you, like little things happen.
You can overanalyze.
Can't
we? And I know for those of you that are members of Paths to Parenthood and have listened to Julianne Boutaleb, who's a perinatal psychologist, speak on this, and she talks about what we call the Velcro effect. And it always makes so much sense to me that if something happens, like they prefer the other parent who is genetically related, we automatically in our heads go, oh, that's because they like donor, it's because we used a donor. And it's absolutely not to do with that. And we had on Paths to Parenthood, there's a child psychologist speaking last night, and just talking about different stages of child development and as they grow older. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about now, trying to make sure that we understand the different developmental stages of children that are normal regardless of how they were conceived. Yet in our situation, we might then put an extra layer of kind of guilt around it, or maybe that's because of this, and actually it's just a natural thing that children do from time to time. And as much as they would go to Lee or to Matt and go, I want daddy, probably more times they come and go, I want mummy, but we just don't really notice it in that way. And so I mean, I would say that the bond between me and the girls and Matt and the girls is no different. And I know you and Lee have said exactly the same. They don't see it, and children just, what they see is there's my mum, there's my dad, and that's our family. They see it through a completely different lens to us, and I think sometimes we imagine that they'll see it through the same lens as us. But that's like our adult feelings, and they've got their own child feelings, and they will grow and they'll evolve and they'll understand more. But it is fascinating, and I think for you, you'll be just in that stage of starting those conversations with them. How is that all going? And that, because that's quite a big thing as well for you as a parent, isn't it?
It took me
start
a
that
long
conversation.
No, definitely, it took me a long time to. I've only probably recently at 2.5 years started to say it as our story. Before it was just reading the books, which are obviously generic. So I felt like I was just reading, I don't know, say any like Disney book or whatever to them, rather than something this. And I don't know, I just wasn't brave enough to say the words. But now,
takes time.
But now I have, and they do repeat the story. So they're starting to obviously in their little way. So like egg donor and daddy's sperm in mummy's tummy. So like they know, like obviously I got a clue what it actually means, but they're getting the story slowly. And even the other day, there was just like a normal egg, like that you eat, like the food egg. And Malaya said egg, and Kawhi said, yeah, egg, not egg donor. That's not the egg donor, that's just the egg. And that was just like a random conversation. So they're remembering.
It comes up so randomly, doesn't it? That's so lovely.
So and I am in the process of which I need to finish, which I've been very slow at, is doing a book with We Are
Family.
We Are Family, which obviously is personalised. I don't know, obviously you've got one, which is personalised obviously to actually our family story, which I know will really help me, and to tell them the story, because obviously it'll be there in black and white and it will help them. And I'm very grateful for that book, because I have been trying to like do my own version myself for ages, and I've just not been able to bring myself to do it.
So busy, aren't you? You're busy being a mom, and I found that book has been incredibly helpful because the girls can see themselves in it, and they can kind of go, that's what happened, this is us. And I've often found Lena loves it so much, she used to fall asleep with it, like still holding it. But I think like the the way I started with the girls, I've managed to kind of condense it down and just say, look, mummy could make you with her eggs, but mummy made you with her heart. And I think it is in this remembering, obviously we're remembering what we couldn't do, but also what we did do. And actually, as much as we needed that amazing person who has donated eggs, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us as well.
Definitely,
And that our hearts, and I know it sounds a bit corny, but it is so true. And Eska has repeated that. Oh, mummy made us with her heart, and they talk about mummy's eggs being broken, and we're now just getting to a stage where I'm talking to Mila a little bit more about what DNA means, and that it means that we won't share the same characteristics. And in some ways it was really scary at first. I remember sobbing when I first got the book to read to Mila when she was just 3. But now it feels much, because I'm so much more secure in our bond that we've got, because it's just us. She knows I'm not anyone else other than mum. And I think that fear at the beginning, where you think, oh gosh, are they going to grow? Are they going to replace me one day? Are they going to not see me? You just know as they grow, and they lean on you, and you understand them inside out. It's really hard to describe. And I think I remember at 2.5, still kind of when they were younger, and go, oh, how are they going to feel about it? They're going to ask questions. Are they going to? But it is over time where these little things have come up. And I always remember the one where Mila in the car once said, I know, mummy, I think the donor put some blue and a curl in my egg. And I said, oh, why? And she said, because I've got curly hair and blue eyes. And it was that moment of her starting to piece together some of what it meant. And instead of feeling sad, I felt actually really proud. And I thought, in years ago, that would have completely floored me, and thought, oh, she's talking about what we don't share, but we can also highlight what we do share at the same time. It's all about a balance, I think, in terms of kind of how we talk about these things. I'm just conscious, I'm just looking to the side, because I know we're getting some questions through.
I did see some little things pop up.
I'm just going to come to this one first. So did you struggle to bond with your children at all once they were born? And I know you had a really difficult start, didn't you, Tia?
I think mine was probably completely different. And obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, I was very ill for 8 months at the start of their life. So I didn't get to fully look after them for those 8 months. And that was nothing to do with egg donor conception or anything like that. It was just a bit of a bad luck in pregnancy and birth complications. And so I didn't feel like I was, because I didn't look after them, obviously I didn't get that bond. So I remember around when they're about 1, I remember thinking, realizing, whoa, we do have a really good bond. But before that, I did blame it on the donor conception side of things, but it wasn't anything to do with that. It was just because I didn't get to do those things that most other mums get to do with their little ones. And I was away from them a lot, or if I was with them, there was someone else with me. So we never had the ones where I didn't ever sleep next to them in the bed, when obviously Lee would sit there and pass them over sort of thing. So things were a bit different. So, but I realised after, it was nothing to do with that. It nothing to do with the egg donor side of things. It was just down to and I remember someone I was under. I did struggle with my mental health a lot during the pregnancy and going through treatment and stuff. And I was under the mental health team for support in maternity. And I remember the mental health midwife saying to me when we were doing my birthing plan, she said, I felt nothing for my kids when they were little. She was like, you're just keeping them alive. She said, that's all you're doing, to begin with. So she and hers obviously genetically, she had them all natural, and I think she had 3 or 4, and she was just at the beginning, you are just and
time.
And I think it does, if you walk, and I remember saying to someone, if you walk past someone in the street and you suddenly meet them, it's not, you haven't got an instant bond with them, and they are strangers when they're first born. You don't know them, they don't know you. You're building that bond. It doesn't come immediately. And I know a lot of people say it's love at first sight and things like that, they automatically melted and fell in love with them. Maybe some people do, I don't know. But a lot of people I've spoke to who conceived naturally have said no, not at all. like you're, no matter how you've given birth, you're knackered, like you're not feeling great. So the last thing, like, it's not that gushy
I think
thing.
you have this imagined version, which is so like perfect. And
yeah,
I had similar to you. I was whisked away into theatre and didn't have that moment. I remember Matt sending out a picture of him and Mila to my family. I was like, oh, I'm not even in it. And like, oh, you had those moments. And again, like, I struggled just as a new mom, which I think I would have done it anyway. And I think I wrote a post about this recently. It's knowing that those things can be normal regardless, and not just putting it all on donor conception. And just going back, because I'm conscious a lot of the questions we had were around that. I think there's people making the decision to go down this route, but also then people making the decision around what donor to use and how to make that choice as well. I mean, obviously, we went down the route of going to the Czech Republic. Lots of reasons for that at the time. I didn't really know to look elsewhere in the UK. I think I was in my local clinic. The list was huge and we weren't getting any closer to the top. So we thought, right, we want to go and do something. I knew someone else who'd been abroad. We had a consultation, took that leap of faith, and it was very, very quick. And we were matched with the donor. Without much input from us other than giving physical characteristics and putting our trust in them. And I look back now and I think I can see my emails back and forth and I'm like on the edge. I know I am when I look back now. And I really wish that I'd had some more support around that element. And I wish I'd known what other options were out there and that there were other things. And I know obviously Apricity do the one-to-one matching with characteristics, and you can see childhood photos, you can get a letter from that person as well. And I think it's only really in hindsight I've looked back and thought actually some of those things would really help me now as a parent to be able to give to them. And I don't know, for you, was it a similar sort of thing or did you feel differently?
Yeah, so I did know about the options in the UK, but I think I'd been to like 2 clinics, didn't have the best experience. Maybe I just needed a fresh start. That was my main reason for going abroad. And so but obviously we went to Greece, and I feel really upset to be saying it, but I was terrified about the open ID as well. Like, I was so,
I think that's normal.
I wish I looked into it more at the time. Because I would now prefer open ID 18, but at the time I just wasn't in that mindset.
It's so hard to project yourself forward though in that moment, isn't it? And I remember like it's those fears that dominate around that whole, will I be replaced one day? Well, what does this mean? And I've kind of openly said as well, as much as I wish they had that option now, I think the anonymity did give me that level of comfort and everything. But it's one of those things, isn't it? We look back and we go, look, we did what we could with what we knew at the time and how we felt at the time, and it is a hugely emotional process to go through. And I think
like
there are things we can do now.
I didn't know anyone that had done that, so I had no one to like go to talk to, or it wasn't really that spoken about like it is now. Like there wasn't that many donor conceived adults talking out then, or I didn't know of it if there was. So and not in the UK. Like there was probably a few American donor conceived adults, but in the UK there wasn't. I don't think there was any at the time, or like I said, not that I know of. So we had, and the law in Greece has actually changed. So they do have open ID donors now. So I did contact our clinic to ask, and because the law was before, because I asked if they could write to our donor
retrospectively,
similar, to see if they could. Now the law's changed, if they could contact her to see if she would be open to changing the contract to open ID 18, but they couldn't contact her because it was the law. The law was different when we had treatment. So our bit with the matching process, bit like you, we had to send information across. We did get a whole profile about our donor, and there wasn't any photo, quite basic information like physical characteristics, if she had any children, what her job was, her hobby, if she donated before, just information like that. I did go back and ask a lot of questions. Now I think, Christ, they were ridiculous. But I did asked. I remember I asked what her teeth were like.
Yeah.
The clinic in Greece, they do know the donors, sort of thing, like they interview them,
Yeah.
like that's how they're donors.
Yeah.
That's what her teeth was like, what her figure was like ish I mentioned, like just those of like, and I think, why the hell did I ask that? But I think it's because maybe I was looking for me, but
yeah. And I think you
it's never
lose
going to be
that
me.
element of
But
control, don't you? You want to be able to kind of know as much as you can and shape that. And I remember that exactly the same. I think they didn't ask for photos, but I sent them. I was like, hey, here's me. And yeah, and somebody asked the question actually, finding it hard to prioritize physical characteristics versus personality. And I suppose in our situation, we didn't really get to know that much
no,
about her personality. I do wish I'd have known more about her now. But I genuinely think once you move on and you're parenting, there's nature, but there's also nurture, and that environment, I think, and what I've seen in the girls is the nature was very obvious at the beginning. They look very much like Matt, my husband. I still struggle to look at them and really picture what our donor looks like. I can't. I thought I might be able to across the three of them, but I haven't been able to. And obviously, we think she's got curls because all girls have got a curl to their hair. But what I'm starting to see now as they get older is I'm starting to not just see the nature, but see the nurture side and see those bits where suddenly I thought, gosh, that's just like me, or they sound just like me, or they're acting in that way. So I think at that time when you're making the decision around a donor, it does feel huge and it feels like the biggest decision. And it is a really big decision. We actually did a webinar with Fertility, I think it was last month or a month before, with Julianne. So I think that can be watched back. I don't know whether Kat, when she sends out the recording, can send that out as well for anyone who's stuck at that point, because Julianne made some really good points about why we might feel so fixated on certain things, and also that understanding the nurture and nature. And I know we had a question as well around where to find information about epigenetics, or what research you know of or have looked up. And that's another kind of emerging topic that we don't know that much about. And I think there can be lots of conflicting information out there. But there is an amazing webinar with Dr. Helen O'Neill on Paths to Parenthood, and she describes it as almost like your DNA is like a ball of wool, but actually through egg donation, it's almost the way it unwinds and the way you do that is what you're influencing. So you don't change the genetic makeup, but you influence how the genes are expressed. And that, I think a lot of people can find some comfort in that, but I think it's looking at it without knowing that actually it doesn't mean you're genetically related, but actually it's you can shape, and you shape through so many things, as well as kind of nurture as well. But did you look into anything like that?
No, I
Tia, I didn't really know about it.
No, and to be honest, even now I haven't, because I think it's just my personal opinion. I think you can get a bit fixated on it, and I think a lot of people think, I think it can make you believe what's not real. I think you can interpret it the way you want to interpret it, basically. I think a lot of people, like you said, like there's not a genetic connection. It doesn't mean that. It's just you turn on, basically, like different elements of the donor and the male DNA, basically. But I think people can maybe look into it a bit too much. And I think it's sometimes the way it's worded can confuse people. So it's not something that I looked into myself. And like you, I think it's more of like the nurturing, and I'd rather stick to that side of things, of knowing that there's. I remember my mum saying to me a couple of weeks ago, "Oh my God, Malaya," she did like this cheeky little fake smile that I do, and mum was like, "She did like what you just," and it is, they just pick stuff up. So there's going to be certain things they do which is like us, and their personality is, and I don't think that your personality is something that's in your DNA.
No.
I think that's something that is more nurture. So I think
you're shaped by your environment and what you're exposed to, and obviously there's an element of both. But I like just certain things. Like I was watching, Mila was in a school show just yesterday, and just her little, like she was singing and she walked out, and just the little smile she gave me, and that little, and she kept looking over and like smiling, and it's just those little moments that you know that in there, you are mum, and all these worries that you have about. And I felt so proud of her. And I thought, like, I remember thinking, would I feel that same pride? And a child, of course you do, you are so
Yeah.
proud of them. And it is a process over time. I know we've talked a lot about bonding, but it really is in those little moments, or that moment of validation when someone else looks at you as the mum and goes, oh gosh, wow, you must get this all the time with twins. Oh, you've got your hands full.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but
And it is like
but
Malayan quite at the stage at the moment
yeah,
where if we're out somewhere, they're like, no, it's my mummy.
yeah,
And it's like they're very proud that like you're their mum sort of thing. And obviously because they're twins as well, it's like, no, it's my mummy, no, it's my mummy, like fighting over
yeah,
whose mum you are sort of thing. So I think it's like they're proud that you're their mum sort of thing. So to them, you are their mum, you're their world. That's they don't know any different.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think just moving on to, we've had another question around kind of finding the donor at some point in time. And obviously, we both use anonymous donors, which makes it slightly more difficult. But we know with the prevalence of DNA testing nowadays that things are possible. And I actually think in another 10 years' time, when the girls
Yeah.
are kind of older, that, I mean, who knows what you'll be able to find out. You'll probably be able to just pop it on a computer and instantly it'll
There,
pop up.
yeah.
Um, and I think just going back to those early fears about kind of being replaced and what does that mean, and what will they feel towards that person? I think curiosity is a really important thing, I think, to talk about, because I think often we see it as though, well, it's either me as mum or the egg donor as mum, and it's one or the other. And actually what I really have to, and sometimes I have to switch my rational brain to think like this. It doesn't just come naturally, but to go, actually, I am their mum and will always be their mum, but there is also another person who is genetically related, as a genetic parent in the scientific sense of the word. Doesn't mean they will see them as a parent, but I can completely understand that they may be curious about who she is, what they get from her and her family and everything else. And that's something where it still will be jarring, I think, if we
Yeah.
get to that point. But I've kind of accepted now that, and actually speaking with so many donor conceived adults, that actually it's really normal to have that curiosity. And I think that's something that we need to, as parents, sort of open ourselves up to over time. And I mean, I don't know, how are you feeling on that, Julie? Because you're a bit earlier on than me,
Yeah.
and
So
it's a bit up and down, isn't it,
yeah,
with
yeah.
those feelings?
But I'd love to know what she looks like.
Yeah, same here.
And
Yeah,
before I never ever would have. Um,
yeah,
but now I do. If I saw a photo and saw her, maybe I feel different at the time. But how I feel at the moment, I would. Obviously, like you, if and when Malayan Choir do want to obviously find her, we'll both support them. Obviously, you would have to go down the DNA route, but we'll both support them. So part of me does. Lee's in the mindset is at the moment it terrifies him.
yeah.
And I don't know if he's worried about how I'd
Mm,
feel or how Malayan Choir are going to react or what. I don't know what it is, but it scares him.
yeah,
You still support and go through it, but the
yeah,
mindset he's in, it scares him at the moment. Um,
yeah,
but I'm someone who quite deals with emotions after. It's probably not very healthy, but so yeah, I don't know. If I think about it, oh yeah, I would really like to. And our my donor does have a child, so they do have
mm,
a donor sibling at least, obviously one,
yeah,
because at the time she had one
yeah,
child. If she's got any more, or did donate any more, I don't know. Um,
yeah,
so they do. So obviously they potentially could want to
mm,
find this
yeah.
donor
And
sibling. So
that's
yeah,
all the
it's
different.
weird. It does.
Yeah,
I don't know. I know at the time it would scare, and I don't know if you watched that documentary a while
I was
ago.
just about to mention. Yeah, well, there was Born
And
from the
that did
Same
make me feel a bit,
Stranger.
oh my God, because the donor was
It's the
quite,
reality. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
think it was
And
with was it when they went abroad and that was the egg donor?
I don't think I've seen that one, but there were
Mm.
definitely a few in there. And I know as part of the virtual summit that we held back in April, we interviewed a couple of the the now adults, donor conceived adults from that show. And it was really, really interesting hearing about this curiosity. But I do find whenever I hear a donor conceived adult talk about this curiosity, it's never like, oh, it's because I don't.
Yeah.
Well, they're always very like, oh, I don't want to upset my parents. And that's what I don't want the girls to ever think they're going to upset me by wanting to find out more and then completely be there. But it's always about just wanting to understand more about themselves. And there's nothing, yeah, it doesn't seem to be any more to it than that.
I
But
think
it is
I'd
a
probably
really
feel exactly the
tricky
same
one.
way. Like I'd probably have questions and
Yeah.
want to know, and especially because probably like your girls, like my donor is Greek.
Yeah.
So obviously
Yeah,
that's
mine's from the Czech Republic. Yeah.
yeah, so it's all different heritage. So as
Yeah.
well, they may want to know about that heritage as well. Like who, obviously, obviously we don't know how they're going to feel, but potentially they may want to look into that as well. So
Absolutely. And there's a lot, I mean, there's a lot of time to come. And I think Matt's very similar to Lee in that sense that he's a little bit more, I've kind of said, oh, I wonder whether we should look at DNA testing. And actually, one of the questions has been around, like, what do you think about parents trying to find their egg donor after the child is born, even though there's anonymity? And I think it is such an individual decision. And obviously, in the UK, it's all regulated by the HFEA. So there is that identifying information for the child when they turn 18. But I think for us personally, I think what I've decided to do this year is to do a DNA test myself just to understand how it all works. And it's like that's me dipping my toe in and going, right, okay, let's understand. And we want to kind of do it with the girls as they're a bit older and kind of just almost be with them. Not, I don't want them to put all the onus on them, but that's I think how we will come to it. Even if it's
I've
just to
done
find out
one.
more. Yeah, have you?
But I've
Yeah.
locked it off, so I couldn't be contactable by anyone. Because I didn't want some cousin, like the 100th cousin, saying, "Oh, we're cousins" or whatever. I just wanted to do it just to kind of see how it worked, but also just like the ethnicity side of things. And we have considered, like we were thinking, oh, in a few years, should we lock it off and just do it for like ethnicity side of things, just so we can say to
because you
them,
can do it for
yeah,
health and kind of that side of things, can't you? And then you can switch on the relative matching. And I think that is something, I think 23andMe, and I mean, this is something we can go to through in much more detail, but I think it is something that um we're now at that stage where we're probably thinking more about that, whereas at the very early stages it's very hard to even get your head around that side of things. And but I think the message I want to get across is that I know at the beginning it can feel very, very worrying around the idea of curiosity and that person. But actually, I think when you become more comfortable in your role as mom and you realize that bond, I do think that eases. And I think I would love to say thank you to her because I wouldn't be the mom I am today if she hadn't have donated her eggs. So it's an amazing thing to do. Just from another person has asked around questions around family health history, mental health, etc. Does that vary from country to country? And I think it does. I think there are standard genetic tests that are done, and questions. I do wonder from kind of going abroad how regulated some countries are.
Yeah, I don't think they get, because I asked for a report and it's not something they normally give out, but they happily give it to me. Because I just want something to give to Malone Inquiry to say, look, these are like the tests. But I don't think they like get doctor reports or anything. So it's not, I suppose, like the
it's much more
genetic
regulated
testing
here. Yeah, absolutely. And I think here there's the onus on the donor to update the HFEA with any medical information. Obviously, there is the onus on the donor to do that, but it is much more regulated and that information is kept, especially around, I know we touched on it, donor siblings, and I know we're talking about different TV shows. There's been the Netflix documentary, which I haven't seen yet, but I know quite a lot about, all around donor siblings and that conversation. And you said, obviously, you know that they have a half sibling through your donor. I don't know because my donor didn't have any children at the time of donating and hadn't donated at that clinic before. So she may have donated elsewhere. She may now have had children. Who knows? But there is also those considerations around donor siblings. And I think that documentary has made people feel quite anxious and wanting to understand more. So I just wanted to say that if you're wanting to listen, we've got a podcast, the Paths to Parenthood podcast, where I discuss this with Hayley King, who is a donor conceived person and a parent, and she's a real expert in this. So if you're listening and you do want to kind of just understand more about what questions to ask your clinic around donor siblings and things like that, to understand how it's regulated and actually how you can then think about further on down the line potentially making connections, then there's that resource available for you. But I think when you go through this at the beginning, Tia, it's very much the last thing on your mind, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think
no,
often.
definitely. Yeah. And I think like
Yeah.
now, because there is a lot of TV shows, there's a lot more publicity around everything. Whereas obviously in particular when obviously you were going through it, and obviously then when I was, there wasn't much out there. So it wasn't, probably more naive, I suppose. Yeah, there wasn't as much out there. I suppose you could kind of blank it out even if you did know about it because it wasn't in your face. I think now, and I think maybe in some ways it might be a bit of more like scaremongering, because obviously the only things that are going to hit the TV are the more extreme.
Yeah, it's always a sensational headline. Yeah, so it is about putting it into perspective, I think, as well. Obviously there are these things out there, and I think it's really important you ask the right questions and you really do your research when you're doing this, and like we say, take your time, even though we probably didn't much. But
learn from
I
us.
think, yeah, I know. I think we look back now and go, probably should have spent a little bit more time grieving that loss of genetics, but we are where we are now, and I think it's useful then for us to pass on advice. And I'm going to ask you for your advice for anyone now as we come towards the end. But one more question I've noticed that we had through beforehand was about talking to friends and family about this, because that is a really tricky one. It's a very common question I get about, do your friends and family know? How have you spoken to them? And we have been really open, and we've been really, really supported, and they treat the girls. I mean, you mentioned your mum and dad and their relationship. Like, how have you found those conversations? Have you ever had any kind of difficulties with them?
No, never. All my family know, all my friends know, all Lee's family know. No one's ever said anything, questioned. We've never had a bad response.
No.
And I've got quite a large, like, extended family that I'm very close to, like my mum's cousins, their kids, etc. They all know. And like my family, literally, like all my like mum's cousins, their kids, they're like almost absolutely adore them. Like, what I say, it's not like no one sees them any different, or they're probably more adored than any other member of the family, because everyone knows how special they are, everything, like how they come to be, and so we've been fortunate. I'm sure the opposite unfortunate there probably is people that do get bad experience. So I think it's just due to lack of education.
I agree.
So is why people maybe get, and obviously culturally, obviously different cultures, ethnicities and stuff like that can obviously affect how people respond to it. But obviously that's a completely different topic, and obviously reasoning and how to deal with that's different. But I think my mum follows you, Becky, on Instagram. So my mum doesn't actually like do social media or anything like that, but she's literally just got Instagram to see what, like, just so she could see, like, learn and stuff like that. She's like listen to podcasts, things like that, to help like learning. We have sent Lee's mum a few podcasts to like just get her to look to really understand.
I think you can almost, the way you start to understand and get your head around this. So even just listening to this webinar tonight, and the recording will go out, you can share this with some like friends, family, and there's a free resource on Paths to Parenthood, where it is designed for your loved ones. It's to give them, and there's people talking about what it actually is, what it means, actually how they can support you through this. And then there's also real life stories of families. So I think sometimes people struggle to get their heads around things until they can see it, and that's exactly why we share, isn't it, Tia? I mean, feel free to direct people to our Instagram pages, and maybe we can pop those in the chat. It can be really helpful, I think, to allow, if you can't find the words yourself, because when you're in it, it's so emotional, to go, look, I really want you to listen, to learn about this. Here's a resource that can help you. And that's what we really want to just give the tools and kind of the framework to be able to share what this is and what this means. And usually a lot of the misconceptions that people might have about it, I mean, someone's just asked, have you ever had a situation where someone doesn't agree with the use of donor eggs and sperm? And I haven't personally within my circle. Often people are more in awe of what we've been through to have the girls, and can't believe that you went to those lengths, and how amazing. And but there will be people out there, and certain people's minds you won't change, but you've got to surround yourself by those people, with those people who will support you.
I was really scared to tell my grandparents. So my mum's parents unfortunately passed away, and I wouldn't have ever been scared to tell them. I was very, very close to them. My dad's parents a bit more old-fashioned, so I was really scared to tell them, which I know a lot of people are with the older generation. But oh my God, they couldn't have surprised me anymore. They completely understood, and like my granddad, like someone who I thought would just like normally doesn't really ask about things like that. He was like asking actually like questions about the donor and things, like really wanting to learn more and know. Which
That's
really
amazing.
It completely shocked me. And my granddad passed away not long after they were born, but when he was here with them, he was besotted with them, and my nan's like absolutely besotted with them. And we have just come back from Greece on holiday, and we actually went to our clinic when we were there, and my mum and dad were on the phone telling her, and she was like, oh my God, I'm so happy for them, I can't believe it, like they're going back to where it all began. My nan's like in her 80s, and I didn't think they were going to understand, and but they fully accepted it, fully understood. So I think people surprise you. I think it's more our insecurity, because I got my dad to tell them, because I was too worried to tell them. So I think it's normally like our insecurities of what we think people. I'm not going to say that you might not get the odd obviously I don't know everyone, but 9 times out of 10 it's more our insecurities and what we think people are going to think. People will normally surprise us.
You can get the odd clumsy question that means well, but you think, but I think it is really helpful to have people around you. And I know it can be scary to tell people, but for me, it's helped knowing that those around me, those caregivers of the girls like my mum and dad, that they're aware, and they can also, if the girls say something, they can answer those questions. And so, it is all about having that support. And that's what obviously Paths to Parenthood tries to help you with those conversations with others, with your children, supporting your emotions around grief. So if you're not a member of Paths to Parenthood, you want to look into it. Well, I don't know whether Kat can put the link in the chat, but also through Apricity, you get 6 months access to Paths to Parenthood as well, which is like that emotional support whilst you're going through the treatment as well. And we're really grateful that Apricity do platform these conversations and recognise that this isn't just another medical treatment to get pregnant. It's way more than that. It's a whole new path to parenthood. And so I know we're coming up to the hour now, and I just want to say a huge thank you, Tia. Just to finish, just in terms of what advice would you share for anyone who is kind of at that stage where I know you can probably remember yourself at that crossroads, about to take that leap of faith? What would you say to them?
Don't let fear hold you back. The unknown's a lot more scarier than the reality. So don't let fear hold you back, and let yourself feel how you feel, and just be kind to yourself. Like no matter how you feel, it's no like effect or anything on your reflection, shall I say, on your parenting or how you're going to parent. 9 times out of 10 there'll be normal feelings, and the majority of us would have felt that way and come out the other end.
Yeah, that's perfect. That would echo exactly what I would say. And just to say that you're not alone in this journey. I know kind of we did feel quite alone a few years ago. But you don't have to go through it alone. And I know there's also a community within Paths to Parenthood where you can connect with other people on the journey. We will be looking to do another in-person event, hopefully later on this year. I know Tia, you came to the last one. So there is lots and lots of support. And I know Tia and I are always answering questions through our Instagram. And we will continue to share. But thank you so much, everyone, for sharing and your questions, and Tia for taking the time to come and share your story as well.
No, thank
I
you
hope it's been useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.